Usually when the Supreme Court has spoken, there is very little doubt. Yet viewers, why is it proving so hard for people, or at least Hindus, to reconcile with two decisions taken by the top court recently? The first, when Chief Justice of India, Gavai, dismissed a Vishnu devotee who was hoping that the Supreme Court would intervene and order the ASI or the Madhya Pradesh government to renovate the defaced statue of a Lord Vishnu idol in the Khajuraho temple complex. The Vishnu statue had been defaced by Mughal iconoclasm, and many devotees felt aggrieved that they had to worship it in the form it had been reduced to. But instead of being sympathetic, the Chief Justice of India rebuked the petitioner and told him that he would be better served if he actually prayed to Lord Vishnu than sought redress in a court of law. Viewers, in the second instance, the Supreme Court dismissed a petition challenging the Karnataka High Court's order, upholding the state government's decision there to invite a Muslim author to inaugurate the iconic Mysuru Dasara festivities. Now, Dasara, viewers, is a major event in the Hindu calendar. The decisions taken by the Supreme Court in both these matters have given rise to the perception that justice is selectively secular in India. Is this point of view with which some are questioning the Supreme Court justified? Let's open this up and have a very frank but informed conversation with our guests, and let me introduce the panel. It's an August panel today. We have Dr. Ranganathan, we have Kanchan Gupta, needs no introduction, someone who serves the government. We have Vishnu Shankar Jain, a lawyer, and Surbhi Hodigere, who is a young leader of the Bharatiya Janata Party. Now, Mr. Gupta, I want to begin with you first. Look, courts often intervene, as we know, to protect minority shrines, mosques, and churches. Why is the Hindu devotee's religious sentiment not afforded the same sanctity? Or am I overreacting here?
Thank you, Rahul, for having me on your show. Now, you have raised a very important point. Now, look, this is not only about one comment made by one judge of the Supreme Court or the High Court or the Judiciary. There is a pattern to it, and that's essentially because over the years, over the decades, we have normalized Hindu Misia. I won't use the word Hinduphobia because that would suggest that there is some reason behind being scared of Hinduism and Hindus. This is Hindu Misia, where you have a pronounced dislike for Hinduism, those who follow the Hindu faith and their belief system. Now, let's just go back in time during the pandemic. The manner in which the Supreme Court and Justice Rohinton, I think he kept on coming down again and again on only the BJP-ruled states and gave a very wide berth to Kerala. Now, for instance, Kerala, people went to court saying that Kerala government has relaxed norms, lockdown norms for the celebration of Eid. So they should not be allowed to do so. And he said, no, it is fine. In fact, I think if I'm not wrong, he increased it from 3 to 4 days. On the other hand, although the UP government had not given any permission for Kanwar Yatra till then, or they had not figured out how to allow it till then, the court came down heavily on the UP government and the kind of language they use. We will see how you do it, etc., etc. A second case where it was a hearing which happened on, I think it was a hate speech hearing, and the SG was citing an example of Hindus being targeted with hate speech. And the presiding judge of the Supreme Court in that hearing, he burst out laughing. So for him, it was a laughing matter.
Yeah.
Now, with a history like that, I am not at all surprised that the Chief Justice said what he said. I mean, for argument's sake, one could say that he didn't mean it that way, but it just came out of him. He just blurted
And there
it out
hasn't
that
been,
way.
there's been a sort of clarification, but no retraction, no withdrawal.
No retraction, because, as I said, there is a great normalization that if it is the Hindu society, you can, pardon my language, you can dump on it and nobody will dare say anything. If it's a Hindu, then you can ignore his appeals, his pleas, his sentiments, because nobody is going to stand up for him. And if it is the greater Hindu Samaj, then of course, whether it is temple rights, temple entry rights, whatever, the court plays a very intrusive role, and they decide for you. For instance, they decided that you can't sing bhajans on the road to Vaishno Devi. They decided that you can't play the temple bells. You can't ring temple bells at Ujjain. This kind of intrusion, this kind of broad brushing of what we can do, what we can't do by the judiciary, which really has no role in it. It is not its job. It has nothing to do with the constitution. So long as the faith does not contradict any provision of the constitution, it is perfectly fine. And yet they do it. They do it again and again and again. And if
and it's not just restricted to customs and practices, it's also restricted to, it's also, of course, we see these interventions in personal laws and the codification of such. Yes, so I think, well, so let me just broad base. I think these are very valid points as opening comments that have been made by Kanchan Gupta to set this up. Dr. Ranganathan, the Supreme Court's remarks, now telling a devotee to ask the deity itself, go pray, has raised eyebrows. Now, do you see this as a part of judicial disregard towards Hindu concerns? Is it a pattern or is it standalone?
Good evening, Rahul. The Chief Justice respects all religions, but mocks only one of them. Because even he knows, had he taunted an aggrieved Muslim pleading for a damaged mosque to be restored, go ask your Allah to do something, chances are he'd have met the same fate as that of the Vishnu idol. It is easy to abuse and mock Hindus. They don't behead transgressors. But let this episode not make you believe that the Supreme Court is acting against the Hindus for the first time. Let me give you clear-cut instances, Rahul, where the Supreme Court, in overlooking as well as overseeing blatant discrimination against the Hindus, not only seeded resentment, it stoked the possibility of religious wars in this country. Kashmiri Hindus. Supreme Court refused to reopen the cases of criminality in 1990 against the Kashmiri Hindus, saying, quote, that too much time had elapsed. This after the same Supreme Court constituted an SIT to look into the cases of criminality in 1984 against the Sikhs. That happened 6 years before the Kashmiri Hindu genocide. If this is not seeding resentment among Hindus and stoking religious wars, what is? 2. Waqf Act. For 30 years, the Supreme Court never found illegal an act that gave Muslims the power to claim any property as their own, that allowed them to annex any land housing a functional mosque, allowing Muslims to usurp 20 lakh acres in the last 10 years. If this is not seeding resentment among Hindus and stoking religious wars, what is? 3. State control of temples. How can the state be secular and at the same time control only Hindu places of worship? Why doesn't the Supreme Court, in the interest of equality it so cherishes, ask the state to control mosques as it does temples? If this is not seeding resentment among the Hindus and stoking religious wars, what is? 4. RTE. The Supreme Court that ratified the conjunction of the Right to Education Act with the 93rd Amendment, forcing only Hindu-run schools to give 25% reservation to the EWS children. Muslim-run or Christian-run schools are not under such obligations. This has forced thousands of Hindu-run schools to shut down. If this is not seeding resentment amongst Hindus and stoking religious wars, what is? 5. Free speech. Why did the Supreme Court so ruthlessly come down on Nupur Sharma for merely quoting Islamic scriptures while Udaynideh Stalin roams free? You Russian to call any speech against Islam as hate speech, but call hate speech against Hinduism as any speech. If this is not seeding resentment among Hindus and stoking religious wars, what is? 6. Hindu ritualistic practices. Animal sacrifice is banned for Hindus, but halal is allowed for Muslims, even though both are religious rituals. If this is not seeding resentment among Hindus and stoking religious wars, what is, Rahul? 7. Places of Worship Act. The Supreme Court has willfully ratified the Places of Worship Act that obligates maintaining all religious places as they were on August 15, 1947. Thousands of historical places right now can now never be addressed, even though a legal recourse to correct historical injustices cannot be denied in a democracy. If this is not seeding resentment among Hindus and stoking religious wars, what is? 8. Shabrimala judgment. There are many Hindu temples where the men are barred entry. So was this discrimination, Rahul, or perceived discrimination? Meanwhile, Catholic women cannot become priests. Muslim women cannot enter a mosque sanctum sanctorum, can marry underage. Supreme Court removes discrimination only from Hinduism, not from Islam or Christianity. If this is not seeding resentment among Hindus and stoking religious wars, what is? 9. CAA protests. The Shaheen Bagh and anti-CAA protests that resulted in the terrible 2020 Delhi riots were about the blockade, the blatant illegality of it. But the Supreme Court, despite recognizing illegality, went for mediation to remove the blockade. Would the Supreme Court ask for mediation for everything that it says is illegal? My lords, you should be men, not gods. You should hold a pen, not a bolt of lightning. You should earn respect, not demand it. You should follow law, not emotions.
Well, Dr. Ranganathan, 240 seconds of what is an extremely pointed, very pointed critique of what we are seeing, viewers. I want to open this up and I want to turn the flavor a little bit now towards the second order, Vishnu Shankar Jain and Surbhi Hodigere. This concerns the decision that was taken by the Supreme Court to allow a non-Hindu, specifically a Muslim author, to inaugurate and be the chief guest of the Dasara festivities. Now, Vishnu Shankar Jain, I have to ask you, legally speaking, and this is a legal question, can a court determine the religious character now of Hindu festivals? Because what we saw the High Court kind of doing was to suggest that this is a cultural event. That's exactly what the Karnataka government said. This is not something that is inveiled with religion in any level. So I want to ask you, yes, we've had determinations now of the religious character of Hindu place of worship, but now is this going to extend by logic to determining the religious character of Hindu festivals? Can that happen in a secular country?
See, Rahul, let me begin by saying that yesterday on your show, when we were discussing about the fault lines, when we were discussing about this issue, I had highlighted that the main difficulty is the principle of secularism, which has been included in the preamble. And today's hearing, if you will see what transpired was, the Honorable Court asked that what is written in our preamble? The council replied that secularism is written, all right, dismissed. Actually, there was no hearing. So the point is this, that when we went to the Supreme Court under Article 32 and said that these two constitutional amendments, which have been made by 42nd Amendment in 1976, is completely erroneous. It is against the theme of the preamble. And one of the honorable judges of the Supreme Court was of the view that this constitutional preamble comes with a cutoff date, 26 November 1949. So this constitutional preamble cannot be amended. But ultimately, without any hearing, that petition was rejected. And today we are in a constitutional situation where all our demands are rejected on the basis of the principles of secularism. Supreme Court in S.R. Bomai's case has reiterated that secularism is the basic structure of the constitution. But when we come up with a debate that please tell us what is the true meaning of secularism, there is no discussion. There are petitions filed in the Supreme Court, Rahul, where the demand was that please define the word secularism. That has also been rejected. So on a very vague principle, the things are being rejected. And the constitutional norm, which was set up in Shirur Mutt's case in 1954, is not being followed. I'm very much in tune with what Mr. Kanchan is saying and what my dear senior Mr. Anand Rangnathan is saying. And let me give you certain examples. So far as Supreme Court is concerned, so far as Waqf hearing was concerned, we are celebrating today the order of Waqf, which I feel is not a matter of celebration. There was no hearing on the Waqf Act 1995. No hearing at all. The original act, there was no hearing. Apart from that, the Supreme Court has examined the validity of Jallikattu. The Supreme Court has examined the validity of height of Dahi Handi. Dahi Handi की height कितनी हो? इस पे पूरा एक अच्छे से hearing हुआ है सुप्रीम कोर्ट में. जगन्नाथपुरी रथ यात्रा was stalled during COVID times. Later on, because of uproar, it was restored. Then there is you would have recently heard there's an order of Karnataka High Court wherein they said that if you are distributing pamphlets outside a temple and that too it's a religious pamphlet, it does not violate any of the act. Apart from that, there is a case of Dara Singh. There is no redressal to Dara Singh. Now, point is this: what I'm trying to make. Please understand it as I'm saying it with lot of sense of responsibility. Rahul, as recently as 15-20 days back, sitting judges of Delhi High Court, retired judges of Supreme Court, retired chief justices were having a function in Delhi, and on the backdrop, the poster was of Umar Khalid. And the discussion was how long Umar Khalid will be in jail. Now, can you imagine that if these people were in power, when these people were discharging their duties as per the constitution, what will be the mindset? It is not just an isolated event. Please try to understand. I am saying Justice Rohinton Nariman, I am naming him. Today, his comments on what he thinks about Akbar is well known. So the point is that if I'm going as a petitioner before the Honorable Court, and if there is no neutrality, if there is a mindset which is already pervading, it is not Vishnu Shankar Jain or Jay Sai or Anand Rangnathan or any XYZ who is losing the case. It is the mindset which is making us lose the cases.
Okay. Those are.
And it is, and let me add one more thing. Without any hearing, Rahul, all the cases of temple restoration were stayed by the Supreme Court on 12th of December. From time again, we are moving application that please hear the stay vacation applications. There is no hearing. So the point is that we don't know that where we are going. It's not that we are weak on research or law, but the point is that if there is I'm sorry to use this word, ecosystem, if there is a lobby which they think that they are only intellectually superior and the others are not having good research, it is not correct.
Well, this is the anguish of a Hindu litigant. Maybe the Hindus now need to rethink the process through which they should seek redressal. I don't know. Maybe that's really.
I think we should. I think we should learn from dog lovers.
Okay.
Dog lovers can give us a good example.
Okay. Well, there you go. So some people now believe that perhaps the courts are not the route for redressal. Now, Surbhi Hodigere, I want to come out to you, and I'm not speaking to you today as a BJP leader. I'm speaking to you today as a state mate, a Kannadiga, and I want to ask you a couple of things. Look, we're being told or nudged to believe by the courts that the Mysuru Dasara is but more than just, it's a catch-all cultural festival, and that we should not look at it from a religious prism. First of all, you've been born in that state, you're perhaps acquainted with the customs. Is this really just one of those cultural festivals that is catch-all and has no religious root?
Vishnu Jain ji spoke about imagine what happens if they are in power, if these biases creep into governance, into policy. Karnataka is a testing case for exactly that. Because as we speak, Dasara is being turned into a Hindu festival to a mere cultural one. Just as Onam was before we could open our eyes, today Dasara is being told to us as a cultural festival. And the opposition, Rahul, for Banu Mushtaq ji was never only about the fact that she is a Muslim. It was always about the fact that just a few months ago, she spoke very clearly and said that the Kannada flag that we revere has turmeric and kunkuma, arshana kunkuma. You give a religious connotation to language. How do you expect me, a Muslim, to speak it? You make Kannada into Tai Bhuvaneshwari, as we do with all types of divinity. We see divinity in the mundane. That is our Vedantic ideology. That is what we believe in. And then she says that if Tai Bhuvaneshwari is made into the symbolic of Kannada, how do you expect a Muslim to speak it? when she has made it very clear that it is antithetical to her belief system, to her worldview, to participate in idol worship, something that we hold incredibly revere, something that we have laid down our lives for, our previous generations have laid down their lives for. How can she stand in front of Tai Chamundeshwari, the goddess who is going to be celebrated in Dasara, and bow down to her? You are calling me a kafir, but you celebrate my Devi? You tell me that I should go to hell for pagan worship, for idolatry, and then you come and throw flowers on my Devi? How do those two things go together? Our problem was always that. If a worldview is allowing for this kind of thought process, it is the responsibility of somebody who is a public intellectual to bow out and say, this is not something I can do. And a woman who has, by the way, written about the ills in her own society and her own community, especially for women. There was another author who got the same International Booker Prize. This was for a translation work, Deepa Bastin, a Hindu. No invite for her. The reason I say we don't have to imagine in Karnataka what happens when a particular lobby that wants to demolish everything this land stands for comes to power is because we're seeing this happen day in and day out, whether it is Dharmasthala, whether it is today Mysuru, whether it is Maddur. We had lakhs of people come out on the streets in Maddur when Ganesh Visarjan was stoned down precisely because of the anger that Anand Ranganathan sir was talking about. We are tired of being told that in this altar of secularism, we forget our civilizational trauma. In this altar of being inclusive, we forget that we have our own beliefs as well. We are tired of this. And yes, I might not be speaking today as the spokesperson, or that is an identity I carry with me to every debate, but it must be said that the Congress party has done this merely to irk us even more and say, hey, look what we can do. We can make Dasara into a state festival, and mind you, it was a state festival because the Wadiyars in Mysore gave state patronage. It was not a state festival because the state conceived the idea of Dasara. Dasara, 10 days when the Devi is worshipped. With Devi Aradhane, Durga Puja, Nandi Dwaja, everything happening. You're doing the rituals that we have been taught as our own. But today being told that no, this is just a cultural addition. Nothing to do with what we believe in. Nothing to do with our belief system.
Okay.
This brainwashing, I want to tell every Kannadiga watching today, every Indian, everybody watching today, tomorrow, do not cry if somebody comes and says, hey, Onam, it's just a cultural thing. We do it in office, every year. Dasara is just like that. Don't come crying because we're seeing this unravel in front of our faces.
Well, this is an appropriation of a religion by a state, and that flies in the face of secularism, at least the classic definition of secularism, Kanchan Gupta, and therefore I want to bring you in here. Is it because, and I'm only throwing this out there as a question, does the state appropriate the Hindu place of worship, maybe Hindu customs, appropriate the way Hindus interlocute with each other through their personal laws, because the state treats Hindu faith as a mythology rather than a religion? Are we victims of our own claims?
Well, yes. I mean, for instance, I will give you an example. Durga Puja in West Bengal. Historically and civilizationally, culturally, it has been a great Hindu festival. It has been a Hindu festival from an agrarian aspect when the new crop comes in. It has been a Hindu festival to celebrate the daughter of the house, and that's why she is referred to as Uma. And it was a Hindu festival to the extent that finally from the inner courtyards of homes of zamindars, it became a public celebration. It became a public worship, a public aradhana of the goddess. But look at the trickery which was used when UNESCO has declared it as a cultural marker for West Bengal. And that is where the unraveling begins. So now there is some sort of legitimacy given to the claim, oh, it is not a religious festival, it's a cultural festival where people go and have chicken rolls and egg rolls and they have fun. Now, number two, when you look at this whole thing of appropriation of temples and management of temples, well, this is something which has to be acted upon, and temples have to be restored to the community. Now, when that will happen, how that will happen, God only knows.
Okay.
But this is something which has to be done. And the last point which I want to make, now, personally, I have nothing, I haven't even read the book, but if it has got the booker, I'm sure it's a good book. It's a good translation, and the little I have read about this person, she's as was described over here, she's a public intellectual, whatever that means. But she cannot. This is not a sort of a event where you display your trophies. She is a trophy for the Karnataka state, maybe, but she is not a trophy for the Dasara festival. And that is the distinction which needs to be drawn. In her various public utterances, she is a leftist. She is somebody who is not, particularly given to God and godliness. And how can she then become the presiding guest over here?
That is an important point. That is an important point. Now, transgressions have happened.
I'll just round this off. Yes. Mamata Banerjee tried the same trick. When she got her right-hand man, Firhad Hakim, who's basically a sort of a real estate grabber, and who sort of grabs real estate, redevelops it, and the money goes we know where. Now, she made him the head of a trust which runs the Tarakeshwar Mandir, one of the most important Shiv mandirs in Bengal. Now, there was a public furor, and people just rose up in revolt that you can't do it.
Okay.
The question is not whether he's a good man, bad man, religious man. You just can't do it, and there is a reason why you can't do it. Recently, about a couple of weeks ago, something in Mamata Banerjee's constituency, there was some inaugural. The inaugural is inconsequential, but as part of the inauguration, they broke a coconut, and then for that ceremony they asked Firhad Hakim to do it.
I saw those
Firhad
pictures.
just said, he just did like this, and he just slunk off. Now, a man who actually believes this is idolatry, this is not right, or whatever, it's his belief system, you are forcing him to run a temple trust. Similarly, you're forcing a person who does not believe in this value system, this faith system, to preside over something which is basically a religious event.
Incongruities.
You can go and call it a cultural event.
Incongruities.
So these are, and that is why I said in the beginning
I've run out of
that
time.
in our great country we have normalized these abominations and abnormalities. And all this now seems as normal.
Ergo, justice is selectively secular. And I think all of us here who have spoken have come out and underlined that point. Now, viewers, this is something that we need to think. Are courts the guarantors now of Hindu rights? Well, viewers, we'll have to think again. If this is the attitude, we might have to take a different route altogether. I don't know what it is, but we can cogitate on that. I leave it at this, viewers. Thank you for watching.